Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am calling the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. Monday, November 18th, it's 5:18. I am going to call the roll briefly. Councilwoman Porterfield is absent, obviously. Councilmember Allen. Councilman Cortez is absent. Councilman Druffel absent. Evan Siegel present. Okay. He's in process. Councilman Gregg is absent. Councilwoman Gamble present. Councilman Huffman absent. Johnston is present. Councilman Spain present. Councilwoman Suarez present. Vice Chair Toombs is present. Councilwoman Webb is present. At least I did just see her. Okay. All right, so we do have a quorum. No one signed up for public comment, so do I need to read the paragraph still? Okay. All right, so we will move into the consent agenda. I'm gonna read the items that are on consent. If there's something that needs to come off, if you could raise your hand. On the consent agenda for today is Resolution 2024-863, 866, 867, 868, 869, 870, Bill 2024-596, 597, 599, 600, 601, 602, 603, and 604. Is there anything that needs to come off of consent? Councilwoman Allen? Which
Bill
one?
2024-597.
Okay. Anything else needs to come off? Councilwoman Suarez?
Thank you, Chair. Item number 9,
Which number is it?
870.
All right, Resolution 2024-870. Is there anything else that needs to come off of consent? All right, that's 597, what's the number? Okay. All right, I'm gonna read the captions of the items that are on consent. Item number 2, Resolution 2024-863, Porterfield Welsh approves Amendment 1 to a grant from the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services to the Davidson County Juvenile Court to develop and implement an evidence-based specialized infant and toddler court to serve children 0 through 36 months. Item number 5, Resolution 2024-866, Porterfield, Evans, Johnston, and Allen approves an application for a homeless management information system grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to the Office of Homeless Services to pay for the software system vendor, purchase additional user licenses when needed, and continue integrating data from the Nashville Rescue Mission. Resolution 2024-867, Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, Allen, and Bowe approves a grant contract between the Office of Family Safety and the Sexual Assault Center and appropriating an additional $100,000 from the general fund for the grant. Resolution 2024-868, Evans Porterfield approves a sole source contract between the Metropolitan Government and Hart Housing LLC, DBA Extra Duty Solutions for the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department to utilize overtime and extra duty scheduling software. Resolution 869, Resolution 2024-869, Porterfield, Evans, and Johnston approves Amendment 1 to a Violent Crime Intervention Fund grant from the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration, Office of Criminal Justice Programs, to the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department to provide support to local law enforcement in developing and implementing evidence-based strategies to combat violent crime. Item number 12, bills on second reading, Bill 2024-596, Porterfield and Bowe approves a license agreement with All Tracks relating to the use of musical compositions in the All Tracks repertory at Metropolitan Government facilities. Bill 2024-599, Parker, Porterfield, Gad, Gamble, and others approves a greenway conservation easement between the Metropolitan Board of Parks and Recreation and Keith A. Monson and Glove Warren Monson for greenway improvements at 135 Kingston Street. Bill 2024-600, Parker, Porterfield, Gag, Gamble, and others, approves a greenway conservation easement between the Metropolitan Board of Parks and Recreation and Oldham Propco LLC for greenway improvements at 304 Oldham Street. Bill 2024-601, Porterfield, Gag, Gamble, and others, approves a greenway conservation easement between the Metropolitan Board of Parks and Recreation and Elizabeth Homeowners Association for greenway improvements at 1813 Elizabeth Road. Bill 2024-602, Porterfield, Gag, Gamble, and others, approves a greenway conservation easement between the Metropolitan Board of Parks and Recreation and 1811 Elizabeth Road Owners Association for greenway improvements at 1811 Elizabeth Road. Bill 2024-603, Porterfield, Gamble, and Parker, authorizes the granting of permanent easements, temporary construction easements, and access easements to Piedmont Natural Gas Company on certain properties owned by the Metropolitan Government located at 1591, 1595, and 1599 Emerald Drive. And Bill 2024-604, Porterfield, Gag, Gamble, and Parker, authorizes the granting of permanent and temporary construction easements to Piedmont Natural Gas Company on certain property owned by the Metropolitan Government located at 0 West Hamilton Avenue. Is there anything that needs to come off of consent? Seeing no hands, can I get a motion? It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. That is how many? 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstentions. All right, moving on to items that were not on the consent agenda. Resolutions on public hearing. Resolution 2024-792, Porterfield, Evans, and Hancock, approves amendment number 3 to a sole source contract between the Metropolitan Government and Fuses LLC to increase the value, extend the term, and utilize the full scope of work, including surveillance technology. Can I get a motion? It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Suara?
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank Officer Gilder, Deputy Chief Gilder, for sending some of the information that he sent my way. I'm also grateful to the to MMPD and the Commandant for actually having a demonstration this morning for members of the immigrant community. And I'm grateful to Chief Drake. I think he got an award for the great work that he's doing. So I know that safety has been an issue in our community, and we have to address that. And I'm glad that MMPD is taking that very seriously and doing all that he can. After having said that, for me, I'm very much interested in giving MMPD all the tools that it needs to do the work that it needs to do without anything that has to do with surveillance or has the potential to be used for surveillance. As somebody that belongs to a community that has been surveilled in the past, and also thinking about what we're heading into in 2025 when we know that what we've heard over and over, and I'll name it Project 2025, surveillance is a big part of that. And so I cannot, in good conscience, be a party to anything that will make it easy. Like somebody said, I cannot, what is the word? Vote against my own best interest. So I think that looking at it from the people that have gone to look at it, from the feedback that I have, there is opportunity for this to be used to surveil people. I know MMPD said they're not going to do that, but there's concern that if there's a directive from the state or federal government, we might not be able to stop that. And so that is a major concern for me. I was here in this town when that happened, when an innocent person was picked up by ICE. I've witnessed surveillance in my community over and over and over again that it's led to disruption of people's life. And so on that note, anything that has potential to be used or is used, I'm against it, and I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? I'm going to go to Councilwoman Evans Siegel, then I saw you, Councilwoman Gamble.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'm going to try to keep these to budget questions. I have plenty of public safety questions, but just those we will save for a more appropriate time. I guess I think if I understand correctly, the residential portion has been pulled out. And I think a question that I have for the administration is sort of mindful that the use sort of at a commercial facility, say like a bar or a gas station, is a little different from institutional at a religious institution or MNPS, where that is more sort of, I guess, reactive to an active shooter situation. The former is more sort of old school kind of crime fighting investigatory work. Did we look at potentially treating those differently and doing different contracts for those? Or was that even a consideration?
Is there someone from the, oh, is that a Chief Gilder question or an administrative question? Okay. Deputy Chief Gilder, if you can come to the table, please.
Sure. Thank you. Chris Gilder, Metro Police Department. So the answer is none of regardless of the location that is covered, are going to be used proactively. It is to be used in response to a call for service. So if there's a crime that has been committed and reported that comes in through our 911 system, say there's a robbery that occurs, or it's a missing person or missing a child, if it's in relation to a call for service, we look and see if there is a camera associated in Fusus nearby that could be of use, and then log into the camera. They do not proactively look into the private cameras for any reason.
But I guess, so for me, I sort of think of institutional use as like religious institutions and MNPS sort of differently from, say, just a random bar, because we know that there's a unique threat to those institutional uses for mass shooting and other sort of tragic events that require a different type of response. Did we ever sort of look at treating them differently from just a generalized use?
Well, what I would say is it's still of use, and if there is a call about a suspicious person that hanging around a religious facility that we believe is there to do harm, then that is a basis upon which they could look into the camera system to help inform responding officers. It's all going to help. It's all going to require an officer response. What Fusus does is it allows the folks at the Community Safety Center to kind of get a heads up view and see, okay, and what's going on currently. If somebody has fled, what direction of flight do they have, and provide that information to the responding officer that's coming to the scene. So it's still of use, even though it's not up and running constantly at religious institutions.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I think probably just one.
Okay.
Am I correct in understanding that we've already spent the money to build the room where this will be used, and that future funds are just in normal budget limit?
So Fusus is used out of the Community Safety Center, and that facility is constructed, built out, and operational.
Okay. Councilwoman Gamble?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. I do have a couple of follow-up questions for Captain Gilder, if you will. The analysis says that this is the third amendment to a resolution where we were previously using or had a Fusus contract. This amendment increases the amount, the value, and extends the term. At what point did we start using Fusus? How does this increase in value impact? What are we getting for the increase in value? Just start with those two, please.
Sure. So the first initial contract with Fusus, the years are running together now, I believe was August of 23. It's probably in the paperwork. We did initially a one-year term. And because we wanted to see if the service operated as described. We didn't want to do a long-term contract for something that wasn't going to work for us. So we did a one-year term. It took about 6 months to get the system operational because it involves integrating other services. So CAD, which is run out of the DEC, our AVL, which is our GPS on our cars. And so we had to integrate those things into the service to make it work. So it really took about 6 months for that process to play out to get it operational. And so then once we tested it and determined that, yes, this is a service that we do want, we were running up on the year timeline, which was the Second Amendment that came forward before council in, I think it was February of this year. And it was at that point that the question was raised whether or not it would trigger the surveillance ordinance. And so we, at that point, pulled the private camera integration piece, which is the part that was in question. We pulled that back and have worked to get some of the feedback that we've heard around the policy, get that in place. And so now this third amendment would be to re-implement the private integration piece and pay for the third year.
Thank you. Regarding the policy that you have in place, when did that become solidified, that policy?
I believe we got that up around the end of September, the 1st of October. It's on our website under the Community Safety Camera Network section of the police department's website. We also put up there a link to provide email feedback direct to us on that. And I've been taking feedback as well from council members and others as this kind of process has unfolded.
So you didn't have the policy in place during the pilot period of that first year?
That's correct. So, we have a policy in place about IT assets. And so those things apply whether you're using NCIC or any other type of IT asset. About it has to be for a legitimate business purpose, privacy protections, things like that. And so that was the policy that covered the use of FUSIS. However, during the discussion, as this has been discussed at council, we started hearing feedback saying, hey, we'd really like to see a freestanding policy that addresses specifically the FUSIS program. And so that's what we implemented.
Vice Chair, if I can ask one more question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. During the pilot period of the first year, did you have any incidents in violation of the policy or any incidents in general? First of all, are you keeping a record of every time you use the FUSIS program? And can you cite any situations or instances where you had a violation of just that regular policy or something happened that this new policy would address?
Sure.
Thank you.
So to answer the first part of the question about are we keeping a record, there is an audit trail within the FUSIS system. So we can see which employees have gone into the system. And for instance, if I go into a camera, it logs that. It also, when the private integration is fully operational, which it was for that period of time like we discussed, it would also alert the donor of the camera. So the business owner, for instance, if I go into their camera in relation to a call for service, it notifies them that I went into their camera system, gives the date and time, and it also provides the call number that it was, the complaint number that it was related to, the call for service. So there's those audit processes in place. To the second part of your question about violations of policy, I'm not aware of any violations of policy or any violations of our policy that occurred during the pilot period. Those would have to be recorded. We have a procedure where we have to complete certain paperwork and route those through the chain of command all the way up to the office of the chief of police. The number of folks that have access to the system is very limited. It is those folks down in our community safety center. So it's a handful of people. This isn't available to the department at large.
Are there any other questions? Councilman Coopin?
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me, even though I'm not on the committee. I've got some questions that I'm saving for public health and safety, but from the, just one general one for Deputy Chief, if I may, and then one budget-focused one. But if folks wanted to see the FUSIS policy specifically, where would they go to get that?
So if you go to the police department's website and you just scroll down just a little bit, there is a community safety camera network. Click that link and the policy is on that page.
Thank you. And then what cost are we looking at and who's paying it? Are we paying a cost for any of the hardware or software, or the business is paying it? How is this financed?
So there is a cost. I have to pull up the contract to see the exact number, so I don't want to misspeak. I can get that to you. But as far as the cameras, the private donors sign up for that through Fusus, and they buy their own. It's called the Fusus Core. So it's the equipment that makes their particular surveillance system interact with Fusus, so that we can see the video. They bear that cost.
Thank you. That's all.
And I may be beating a dead horse, Deputy Chief. So MMPD or Metro is not installing new cameras. We're using cameras from private businesses and residents.
That's correct. The question here is about the use of the donor cameras. So MMPD has cameras existing, like for instance, we have cameras around our headquarters. If you've been on Broadway, you've seen the big blue light with the camera. Those are MMPD cameras. Those can be integrated into Fusus, but those are operational with or without Fusus. The benefit of Fusus is that it allows us to partner with community members, area businesses to either register their cameras and let us know that they exist in the event, but not actually donate any video. And they can tell us, hey, we have a camera. If you have something happen, contact us. Here's our contact. Or they can donate the cameras so that I don't have to reach out, try to find someone, have them go into the system. If that call for service is there, I believe that their camera has captured it. It does. If they're a donor, then I can go into the system myself, and they set the parameters on that. So they can determine if I can only see live stream. They can determine if I can see the last 10 minutes, the last 30 minutes, and which particular cameras I can see.
So you're just using business owner cameras?
Correct. No private residential cameras.
Councilwoman Allen, then I saw you, Councilwoman Johnston.
Thank you, Madam.
Sorry.
I'll also have questions in public health and safety that relate to that. But since we brought up the policy, can you speak to when policy will be updated? We had spoken at the last meeting about the current policy is written specifically around Fusus, and although this is a sole source contract, you know, in general, it would be ideal to have the possibility of looking at multiple vendors. And you'd said that you're receiving feedback from other things and will be updating that policy. And can you speak to when that would be updated? And if there's a way to let the public know when policy changes? Because if we get comfortable with the policy and then somebody decided to change it, it would be great for the public to know so that we can ensure that it stays in a way that we're comfortable.
Yeah, sure. So to answer your question, the first part of your question, I have collected that feedback along with others. I've actually already made those changes to the draft. And my goal was, because I still had folks coming through the Community Safety Center we were getting feedback from. And so I didn't want to push out a revision without getting all the feedback first. So my goal was to, I should by tomorrow be able to push out the current version of the policy. It would go in the same place on the website. To your question about policies and knowing if they changed, that's very easy to find out because again, if you go to our website and you go to the menu part, there's a drop down and department manual is one of the options. And we list on there the most current version of the manual, and on the cover page, it has a date and it tells you. And we're currently in the practice of updating that on an annual basis.
Is that it? Councilwoman Johnston?
Thank you. There's been quite a bit of chatter about this, and I've seen a lot of things that are actually false. Deputy Commander Gilder, is it fair to say that this is not necessarily an increase in surveillance? These are existing cameras. This is just an integration, which in reality only expedites any investigation or public safety response that would be necessary?
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that by some that these are cameras that are constantly streaming in, that we're looking at them constantly on a big wall, and that is not the case. Not the donor cameras. If you've been to the Community Safety Center and you've seen video on the wall, those are Metro-owned cameras. The donor cameras, what we're talking about, are only being tapped into in response to a call for service. And so, yes, it basically streamlines the process of, and I'll give you an example. I had a council member down there. We had a shots fired call that occurred. They had a Metro camera nearby. We start pulling up that camera and looking for our suspect. An officer went to a local business and was on the radio trying to give a description to the other officers about what he was looking at from the business surveillance camera. Now, he had to drive to that business. He had to go inside. He had to find someone who operated the cameras. They had to go in and go back and forth. And then he's on the air relaying this information. With FUSIS, if that business is signed up, the folks down the Community Safety Center can do that. And that officer who's gone into the business can be out in the field looking for the suspect. So that's how it works. Again, it's not a live stream of surveillance. We're not looking proactively at these cameras. The only time we're going into these cameras is in response to a call for service.
So again, it's not increased surveillance. These are cameras that are already there, and these are already cameras that you would probably go knocking on their door during the course of an investigation or response to a call. It just expedites that
Correct.
investigation or response.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Are there any addition? Oh. Councilwoman Sawyer.
Thank you, Chair. I feel like a redirect is necessary. Deputy Chief Gilder, because I think my colleagues, that there's a misconception. The description says we're using the full scope work, including surveillance technology. So it is a surveillance technology, right?
I think again, I wasn't speaking to you specifically when I said a misconception. I just want to be clear.
Oh, no.
on that.
I
I'm not saying
know
you're going
that.
I've fielded a lot of questions about fuses from a lot of folks, so that's what I was speaking to.
Yes, sir.
But I don't know the surveillance technology. I'm not sure that's the language that's in the legislation. I didn't write the legislation. Again, when I think of surveillance, I think of real-time watching, monitoring. That's not what this would allow us to do. Again, the only time I can go into that camera is in response to a call for service. So.
And also, does this not include not just cameras by businesses, but Metro also has cameras that are already up as well? I believe that's one of the things that you said. So the idea that Metro camera is involved is not a misconception either. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Metro cameras have been in existence over a decade. So there are Metro-owned cameras, like I said, for instance, around police headquarters and like down on Broadway. And so, yes, we would integrate that into FUSIS because FUSIS is a tool that just puts everything in one spot and you can see it up on a map and see where all these assets are. But those would function and operate even without FUSIS.
Okay. And so if this is integrated into FUSIS, then this would be something that Metro will have to monitor or look into. Would that be correct? And I'm not talking about the business owners. I'm talking about the Metro part of it.
I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm sorry.
So, what is the point of integrating it into FUSIS, if I may ask?
The Metro cameras?
The Metro cameras, yes.
Just to have it all in one spot. So the operator that's sitting there can literally looks at a map and the call for service pops up and they see where cameras are. And they can see if that's a donor camera nearby. They can see if it's a Metro camera nearby. They can see where the police GPS is to show what cars are nearby. So we have that GPS already and we have the Metro-owned cameras. But FUSIS puts it all into one visual spot so that operator can see what assets are nearby and respond accordingly. Okay. That's the benefit of that.
Thank you. And the last question is if there was any subpoena of that data that is collected by FUSIS and MMPD, MMPD would not have any right to say no to giving that to a government agency.
We have to respond to a lawful subpoena, but the thing I would say is that when we say data, we're not collecting data, we're not importing data. The only thing, or video, the only video that we keep from donors is if it is actually contains actual evidence of a crime. And that's the same video that we would get in our car, drive to that business and collect from them physically. This just allows us to collect it via Fusus.
And one more thing, Chair, and thank you, and again, like I said in the beginning, thank you for all the information that you sent me. So this use of this technology, as you describe it, I think that's based on how MMPS intend to use it and is using it or will use it. But the use of it can be expanded into doing more and retaining more if need be. Is that correct? Or does he have a limitation? That's all he can do? Or does he get to do more?
With video, are we talking about? Is that what you mean with the donor
Yes,
cameras?
yes.
No, I mean, I think businesses, when they sign up, there's contractual language that they enter into with Fusus. So I don't think that, again, I haven't examined it for this question, but I would be surprised if there is some provision in there that says, despite how, we said we were going to use this, that now we can go into it anytime, anywhere, any place. If that were the case, again, one, they're going to know if we've gone into their video. So they're alerted if we go into the video, and they're alerted why we went into their video and who went into their video. And it's completely optional. They signed up, they sought out and signed up for the program. And if they thought that it wasn't being used appropriately, they would simply just drop the program. So it's completely voluntary.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that at least some of the use, the cameras, and some of the things that there's information on both sides. And so where there's misconception on one side, there is on another side not providing some of the information. I just want to make sure that at least I clarified that comment, because people that are concerned are not just concerned in a vacuum. It's based on use. In other places, it's based on technology that could be expanded. It's based on the unknown of what could be called for and what it could be expanded into. So we cannot just brush it aside. And so that's what I wanted to make sure that we clarify. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Councilmember Gregg?
Just a point of clarification for me. Are we saying that we only access the private camera when there's an incident related to that camera?
Correct.
Correct.
So if there has to be a call for service. So for instance, if a crime has occurred in the vicinity of the camera, or again, the reason the term use call for service, because if we had a missing Alzheimer's patient or a missing child, that is a call for service that if it's near that camera and we believe that camera has possibly captured relevant footage, then we would tap into that camera. We do not go into the camera unless it is related to a call for service.
So in simple terms, it's need-based.
Yes.
And then did I just hear you say that the private camera owner can opt out at any time?
At any time. They are in total control. They control which cameras are accessible for what period of time, and then they can terminate at any time.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional discussion on RS 2024-792? Seeing none, we're going to raise hands on this one just so we can get an accurate count, just in case I know we have at least one no vote. So all of those in favor, if you could raise your hand. 6. All those against, raise your hand. Any abstentions? All right, we have 7 in favor, 1 against, and 1 not voting. All right, moving on to item number 3, Resolution 2024-864, Porterfield and Johnston, authorizes the Metropolitan Department of Finance to enter into memorandums of understanding with certain metropolitan government departments and agencies concerning prior appropriations of American Rescue Plan Act funds. Can I get a motion? It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Allen?
Thank you. I read the analysis, but I just need to hear it in English from Mary Jo. Can we get an explanation from the administration?
Ms. Wiggins?
Thank you, Chair or Vice Chair. This is actually the document that the U.S. Treasury recognizes as creating an obligation for the use of the funds. So what you see is every department has signed off that they will use the funds according to the U.S. Treasury rules for the scope of work that this body has already approved. So there is no new scope of work included in any of the documents. It is every individual resolution that has previously been approved by this body. There's no reallocation of funds. It is the scope of work approved by this body. It is simply put in this format because this is the format that the U.S. Treasury is recognizing as an obligation, and all funds had to be obligated by 12/31/24. So we wanted to get in front of that date. This means all of our funds are obligated with this scope of work. It means that there can be no new scopes of work, but we can move funds from one scope of work to the other after that date.
Anything else, Councilwoman Allen? All right. Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that explanation. The only question that I have is in looking at the details and looking at the appropriation to the departments, some of them have a huge appropriation, but when you look at the amount spent to date, it's very low. And they have until 2026, I believe, to spend the money. And so is there a conversation with the departments to make sure they're on track? And what happens if we see that they will not be able to expend by 2026? Are we able to move that to other department, or do we have to resubmit this, the obligation statement?
Ms. Wiggins.
Thank you. We do track every quarter, we get a report from the departments. And so we are staying on top of them. We understand if somebody hasn't spent the funds, why. They do have until 12/31/26 to spend the funds. And if you recall, I believe it was the first meeting in October, but one of the scopes of work has a bit of what I'll call kind of a fallback, a default, where we obligated only $39,000 to the REACH program. We are trying to actually get enough funds for a new ambulance for REACH. And after that, we can also fund any public health or public safety salary. So what that means is even on, December 30th, if somebody comes to me, now we're tracking it, I don't expect we'd know that late, but if for some reason, as late as 12/30/26, a department has unspent funds, also in that same resolution was the ability for the finance department to approve a reallocation of funds. So we would take funds from one scope of work to the other so that everything is spent by 12/31/26. We will not return a penny to the U.S. Treasury.
Is that it, Councilwoman Suara? Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Against, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Is she back? So it's 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. All right. Item number 4, Resolution 2024-865, Porterfield, Evans, Johnson, and Allen approves an application for a coordinated entry process grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to the Office of Homeless Services to support the work of coordinated entry through staffing, program evaluation, and community education. Can I get a motion? Can I get a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. All right. Item number 9, Resolution 2024-870, Porterfield and Evans approves an application for the Edward Breen Memorial Justice Assistance Grant from the U.S. Department of Justice to the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department for specialized training and equipment to ensure personnel maintain needed certifications for criminal investigation and crime reduction initiatives. Can I get a motion? It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Suara.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Chief. So this is one that we've approved every time. But in looking at the analysis, I noticed that about 1 million of this fund is for equipment. And in looking at the equipment details, I see a lot of cameras in there. It says safety cameras, and so I was just wondering what type of cameras, what are these for, and just wanting to have a better understanding.
Deputy
Sure.
Chief Gilder.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know that there was a lot of cameras. I know there was one surveillance camera. Those are, I believe that's the kind that we utilize for like, when we have a warrant for some type of like, undercover surveillance on a location. That's that camera. I only see one camera in the equipment section. The rest of the stuff that I've got is like fitness equipment for our precincts, some computer equipment, monitors, spike strips that we use, pursuit termination devices, HR software.
I'm having the analysis that I have cameras. There's about 7 or 8 in the equipment list that was attached to the contract.
Unless I missed one, I see one.
I mean, we can try and get it before tomorrow. I just want to have a better understanding of what they are and what they do and all that stuff. And
Yeah, unless the administration found something else, I'm looking at the grant contract, and the only camera I see is one camera.
look at the equipment list. Do you have the analysis?
Is there anything that someone from the admin table wants to add?
In the exhibit attached to the bill? Unless maybe I look at something else, but that's what I saw. In the attachment?
Yes, application.
Unless I'm mixing up with 869. Unless I'm mixing up with 869. Don't have my note. Check 869, check that. Maybe I've mixed those two up. It was 869, okay. All right, it was 869 that has all the equipment, not 870. So I will ask you that tomorrow since I didn't pull it up. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you. 869 does have safety cams listed, which I believe are dash cams, for what it's worth. Yeah, thank you.
All right, is there any other discussion on item number 9? Councilman Spain?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one, the maximum grant award, it looks like goes up by 525,000. Just my back of the napkin math, that's 75,000 per SRO. That's an additional 7 officers. If we were, I'm sorry.
We're not on that one yet. That's the
Sorry.
next one. You'll be back, Chief Gilder. Any other questions for 870? That is the Edward Breen Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. All right, hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. All right, so now we are on item 10, Resolution 2024-871, Porterfield, Evans, and Johnston. Approves an application for the statewide School Resource Officer Program grant from the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security to the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department to provide funding for the placement of one full-time school resource officer in each K through 12 public and public charter school. Can I get a motion? It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilmember Spain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me try this again. So as I was saying, the maximum award on this goes up by 525,000 at 75,000 per SRO. That's an additional 7 officers. And we were already in every middle and high school. That's not enough to add elementary schools. So are we bringing more SROs into the mix for middle and high schools, or where's the difference go?
So you've found my kryptonite, which is math. That's the reason I went to law school. I'd have to go back and do the math. Honestly, I have not looked to see. You're right. We are covering all middle and high schools. There's 29 middle, 16 high schools, and we're adding 7 elementary schools. So it's a total of 52 schools. They do pay for an SRO up $75,000 per person per SRO. But I haven't looked at the math. So you're saying that there's more than, can you repeat that for me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you just answered it. It might be the 7 elementary schools. The maximum award
Yes.
goes from 3.375 million to 3.9 million. So it's a difference of 525,000 divided by the 75,000 per officer would be an additional 7 officers. So it may be those 7 elementary schools.
That would be it then. That's the difference. The rest of the contract remains the same from last year.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other additional questions, conversation on Resolution 2024-871? We're talking about SROs. Councilwoman Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may not be allowed to ask this, but why does TCA 107-504 make it so that the application is confidential? Why can't we see this without asking?
Is that a Director Darby question?
Yeah, that's the list of confidential documents for the Public Records Act. So what would otherwise be a public record if there's a state law that says that it shall not be. And so it's pretty broad in what school security documents are not available to be disclosed to the public. In your official capacity, if you need to see it, you would have access to it, but I would send you an email saying, do not disclose this to outside of the scope of your work.
So it's a safety issue. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, conversation on Resolution 2024-871? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? All right, motion carries, 9 in favor, 1 against, 0 not voting. All right, we do have a late filed resolution. That's item number 11 by Porterfield, accepts a grant from the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Information Technology Services Department to provide services relating to the Broadband Connected Community Facilities Program. Can I get a motion? Can I get a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries, 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Item number 13, Bill 2024-597, Porterfield and Evans, approves amendment number 2 to the contract between the Metropolitan Government of Sycarus Technologies to extend the term of the contract. Can I get a motion? It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Allen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that we're extending this beyond the typical 60 months, and I just wondered why we're expanding it, and do we have something that says this has been a good program? Or I just remember some vague grumblings about phone service being too expensive and people being unhappy. So can someone provide information to the contrary?
If you could introduce yourself and respond to the question.
Yes, I'm John Hudson with the Sheriff's Office, and this is a contract that we've had for this particular one for a little over 5 years, obviously. But it's been a contract, it's basically inmate telephone and communication devices. And so we've been doing this since I've been here, which is 22 years, some form of communication. The reason it's late is because the FCC was in the process of ruling on setting limits on rates and fees. And so once that was done, we were able to start that process. Doing it prior to that, it could lead to some problems in case we had an award and then they said that everything's changed, they won't be able to do that. So that's where we are today.
Any additional, Councilwoman Allen?
And so I guess I just would ask the question again. Typically, when we get to the end of a 5-year period, we start with a new contract or something, I think, if I understand that correctly. So just to get a little more clarity around, was this just phenomenal service and that's why we're continuing, or why did we not start with a new contract at the end of the 5 years?
Mr.
We
Hudson?
didn't start with a new contract because we have to go out to bid. It's an RFP process, request for proposal. And there was not enough time to execute that based on the FCC ruling.
Councilwoman Allen, anything further?
And when will that RFP process happen now?
Mr. Hudson?
Yes, ma'am. It's in process right now. We already have questions. There's about 100 and some odd questions that we're answering. Once that happens, they have a deadline to submit. There's a selection committee that will process that and select a vendor. I don't know who that's going to be. And then from there, it's contract negotiations, legal, and signature of contract. Yes.
Anything further? Okay. Any additional questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Let's see. Oh, that's it. Did I skip anything? All right, that is the end of the agenda. Meeting adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.